practically middle-aged.
The sheriff calls us outlaws.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to episode 9 of the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. I am Ross and I'm here with Adam, and we are the podcast that aims to disappoint you just as much as the WWE Raw booking room. Adam, how's things?
Yeah, good, thanks. You?
I'm good. Last episode we took a wee trip back into our past and our younger years and reviewed or did our top 5 WrestleManias from the 80s and the 90s, which was great fun. How did you find going about looking at the WrestleManias, your top 5 from the 2000s and the 2010s?
Yeah, it was good. There's clearly no such thing as a perfect mania because there's some issues with every single one, even the ones I've chosen. But it was good fun doing a bit of research, and there's some good events in there to pick from.
Absolutely. And how's the enthusiasm for probably the biggest WrestleMania that there's ever been? You looking forward to 37?
The enthusiasm's low. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Maybe it'll come over the next week and a bit, but yeah, I'm not loving the look of the card so far. I've got to say, it's not got me gripped.
I'm surprised. You were just telling me before we started recording about how big a Bad Bunny fan you are, so I'm sure.
Yeah, once it was explained to me who he was, yeah. But I suppose this being the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast, I'm probably not supposed to know who he is.
That's fair. Just don't go full cornet and start calling him Bugs Bunny. That's too far. Anyway, so we jump in to our WrestleManias of the 2000 and 2010s.
Yeah.
Just a quick thing before we get into this. Like, did you watch a lot of these? I don't mean at the time, but recently have you watched a lot of them?
I have watched many of them, but not all of them. So there's some that are pretty much in my head in terms of like ones that I knew I was going to have on this list even before I started doing any research, really. And I've probably watched them, 4 or 5 times over the years. Yeah. And then we got to the stage where it wasn't as easy for me looking at the cards and thinking what happened then, what was going on then, and I had to rewatch some bits and pieces, so a bit of a mixture for me. What about you?
I watched quite a few of them. A lot of them, certainly like kind of mid-20s, I hadn't seen before, which was quite good fun to go back and like pick through some of the draws, but also pick through some of the cracking matches that I'd never seen before, so that was really good fun.
Yeah.
In retrospect, I was quite surprised how down on not just the current product, but like probably the last 5 years that I was. I thought I quite liked some of the more recent stuff, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah.
Hit me with your number 5.
Okay, so my number 5, which is the one that I just decided on earlier today, it was kind of neck and neck with another one, was WrestleMania 19. So. Okay,
that's my number 5 as well.
Oh, wow. What a coincidence. Imagine it went this way all the way through. Shortest podcast ever. So, yeah, I was kind of, I remember thinking it was pretty good, and around that year I was still watching quite a lot. And then I went and looked at the card and thought, yep, remember this. Didn't rewatch it all, but I watched a few matches from it. And yeah, I thought there was a lot of good in here, and there's also some bits and pieces that I wasn't as keen on, which I can talk about and go through. But yeah, if it's there for both of us, I'll just, if you want me to talk through some of the matches and my thoughts of them, and do you want to chime in?
Sure. Aye.
Yeah. So I think we were maybe similar on this, but Matt Hardy was on this card, and I believe this was during his version 1.
This was version 1,
phase.
yeah.
Yeah.
Matt likes You get the old Internet Explorer type thing
Yeah.
coming at that there. That's cracking. I think that was all him, I believe.
Yeah, and he was there with Shannon Moore by his side.
That's right.
And taking on Rey Mysterio, which was the Cruiserweight Championship match. And
Matt Hardy had dropped, according to... Who's on commentary here? Was it JR?
Commentary here, I did make note of all of the commentary teams. Yeah, it was JR and Lawler, and I think Taz and Cole did some of the rest of it.
There was quite a lot of mention of Matt Hardy having dropped some weight to make the Cruiserweight limit here.
Which, it kind of played into a bit of the sort of character that Matt was, because that obviously wasn't the case, and he was just fighting well over the weight limit. So a pretty enjoyable match, but I just really enjoyed the character. Brought back some good memories for me of the character he was during that stage.
Yeah, same. And I liked the thing they had going on with Shannon Moore.
Yeah.
As well. I also liked Rey Mysterio dressed as Daredevil in this match. That was weird and cool.
Yep. Quite a hot start, quite a fast-paced start and things like that. Plenty of action on the go. The next on the card is one of the bits that I wasn't so impressed with, which was the Undertaker against Big Show and A-Train, and the whole mess with the Nathan Jones situation. Who, I don't know if it was a case of he was never ready, and they didn't want to put him in ring, and I know he didn't hang around very long after that, but it ended up being a kind of handicap match, and then he does a run-in.
He does the one move that he can do. He does a spinning kick.
Yeah, the whole situation kind of confused me. I didn't know, and I remember even thinking this at the time. I didn't know what was supposed to be going on, where this Nathan Jones character had suddenly become unavailable for. I mean, they must know in advance if they don't want to put him in the ring. Did they know in advance, and was it like an on the day decision type thing? Just a mess, I thought.
It's really odd. Imagine Big Show and Albert had broken the streak.
Yeah, that would have changed things pretty significantly. Wonder who would have got the pin.
Oh dear.
I did mention at the top I wasn't impressed by everything on the card, and that was certainly one of the bits that I wasn't so impressed with.
What about Limp Bizkit's rolling performance, Adam? What would you give that out of 10? Come on. You loved Limp Bizkit, but maybe you didn't.
I think there were, at the time there were a couple of songs I liked, but I remember not really liking Rolling. Not for me.
I love the idea Undertaker and Fred Durst being friends. I know I texted you that was when I was watching it. I can't imagine a single thing they would have to say to each other.
Yeah, that's weird.
Keep on rolling, baby.
Plenty of bass in the voice. There was that. I didn't and haven't watched the Trish Stratus Victoria match. I'll hold my hands up on that one.
I could give you a comment on that. Jazz was a very proficient wrestler.
Yes, and I've heard that quite a lot in other podcasts as well.
It wasn't the worst match in the world.
And to be fair, I mean, Trish Stratus, who came in as kind of, model type, she learned how to work as well. I'm not sure where she was on that kind of journey at this stage, but she got there, She was impressive in ring by certainly the sort of mid-stage of her career. And I think Victoria, a pretty accomplished worker as well. So
I didn't recognise Victoria. She seemed to be playing a kind of, I don't know if she's going for a kind of crazy stalker type character or something.
Okay.
But I didn't recognise her, but I might not have been watching it this time.
Yeah. And the next up, they had the Tag Team Championship match with Team Angle, Benoit and Rhino, and Los Guerreros. And this is one of those, I'm not sure about you, but watching this in isolation, without really knowing, the TV at the time or anything like that, it seems like slightly odd placement for Benoit to me. But again, I suppose he's a couple of years away from reaching the sort of peak, or a year maybe away from reaching the peak of where he got to. But yeah, I just thought it was an odd spot for him. But basically, I actually really liked the whole team angle thing.
Oh, me too.
I've always been a Shelton Benjamin fan, and I enjoyed the team. I enjoyed the story behind the team and everything like that. And Eddie Guerrero was always good value as well.
Oh, definitely. And Chavo's an underrated wrestler as well, and especially in a match like that where he can come and do something and go back out. This was a great match, I thought. Yeah, and I think it's always been said, and it's a fair comment, that if Chavo's surname wasn't Guerrero, he'd probably be more highly thought of. It's just that comparison and that association. But if you just look at him as a sort of standalone performer, he's very, very good. Marty Jannetty syndrome. A little bit, yeah. Team Angle at this point really reminded me of the time that we went to Ingliston to see the wrestling. When the WWF came to Edinburgh. Would that have been round about this time? I think that must have been a couple of years after that, because I don't know if Charlie Haas was there. It just was Shelton Benjamin a solo wrestler at that point? I think so. I think when we saw it, he was in like a triple threat match or something like that. That's impressive that you remember that. I just remember chanting his name. He was one of my favourite, like the slow chant of Shelton. Clap. The two things I remember from that event: the Shelton chant and that guy that looked like Kane trying to offer us a burger with his bare hand that looked like he'd been digging holes. Anyway, I digress. Jericho HBK. Yeah, I loved it. Classic. I thought, again, it's not hard to get a story, the story was pretty obvious, and all they had to do was kind of execute it properly, and they did that very well. I thought Jericho's performance was brilliant from a psychology point of view, and he's very believable as that type of character, or certainly in this era he was, of being so desperate to prove yourself against somebody you really looked up to, and to an extent that you maybe go a wee bit too far and things like that. Just thought it was a great match. Very, very much HBK's referred to as Mr. WrestleMania and all that, and I think it's the type of match that shows just how good he was on that stage so often, because it's not the main event, it's a little bit further down the card, but very good match with two excellent performers. Totally agree. I felt that this was quite similar in a way to Michaels and Flair. I think, is it 24? It's about halfway through the card. There's real significance to it, but it's not in the title picture or anything like that. I thought it was brilliant. There's after that, another that I wasn't very keen on in terms of the way it was executed. The Triple H Booker T. I think we spoke about that before. It's just I don't know, ego trip or whatever, but it just felt like Booker had to be buried for whatever reason. And it's the kind of match where, if you think what a win might have done for Booker T, but a win doesn't really do anything for Triple H. I just didn't like the story, didn't like a lot of the way the story was told, and didn't really care for the match, and just thought that the writing behind it was pretty bad generally. Agreed. I'm with you. And then we get to Hulk Hogan, Vince McMahon. Yeah, I'm really keen to hear your thoughts. I just hated it. I've got some notes written, and the main thing I've got written is Hogan v McMahon. If you're having a pensioner in a match, it can't be both participants. And then I've said, does a McMahon in a match really help the buy rate so much when you've already got Austin v Rock on the card? Why does McMahon have to be wrestling at this event? Totally agree. He's done it so many times as well.
Yeah.
Like, is 17 the first time he did it? Possibly. I think
I
it
think
is.
so. Yeah.
And like, there's a proper storyline attached to it. It feels like they did it with Michaels, they did it with Bret Hart, they did it with Hogan.
Yeah, and I do think, you know, there is a spot for Hogan to be at this event and wrestling someone. I just don't think it should be Vince McMahon.
What about Roddy Piper though?
No, yeah.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I didn't enjoy it. What about you?
I didn't want to watch it. It's kind of like that thing of going into the cinema and expecting the film to be absolutely terrible and it being like mediocre and thinking it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised by what it was.
Okay.
But the next match, I thought, for what it was and knowing a little bit the backstory now about the issues that Austin was having, he'd been in the hospital and thought he'd had a heart attack the night before. Knowing that it's his last match, I thought this was tremendous. And if you didn't even have Angle Lesnar, I would have still put this on the list.
Yeah, I think, much like you, I mean, the match just as a match, I thought was good. But knowing everything that's going on behind it, and apparently very few people knew that this was Austin's last night. Mm-hmm. But Rock knew. Austin wanted to give him the win back, which I think shows, you know, the level of respect and trying to go out putting somebody else over, although not really somebody who needed it, but still, you know. But also some of the stuff I've heard about, at the end of the match, when Rock gets a beer and leaves it with Austin, speaks to him and things like that while he's, you know, playing KO'd on the floor. Aye. And apparently he said something like, "Thank you so much for what you've done for me. I love you," or something like that. And I think, you know, there's obviously rivalry. There's, you know, a real life rivalry in terms of wanting the top spot and things like that. But I think there was pretty clearly a hell of a lot of respect between the two, and I thought it came across at the end of the match, even if you couldn't see what was being said and things like that.
Yeah, The Rock kind of moves himself into a position where you can't really see them talking, but obviously with podcasts and things like that, we know now that that's what was said. I love this version of the Rock character.
Yeah.
He's played the arrogant heel before, but this felt like a genuine sort of evolution of his character, kind of like a Hollywood version of the Rock. I thought it was great. His music was different, and the match was a bit like, you know, we spoke about Hogan Warrior, and there's barely a wrestling move happened in the match, but it didn't matter. I think they had the crowd eating out their hand again, same as that match. It didn't matter what actually happened in the match. I thought it was really, really good.
And then the main event after this, there's a few things to talk about in it. So at one point that I've written again in my notes, and it's not a dig at anything, because I think the card is right, and I think you kind of have to position Rock Austin very near the top of the card. And I still, you know, think that the title match should be the top of the card. Mm-hmm. But I did feel like the crowd were a bit down again after the Rock Austin match. And I think that's natural. So yeah, that was my only real gripe. And there's nothing you can really do about that, I don't think, in this situation. Because I think the Lesnar Angle match is a very good one. I think it felt like the first sort of crowning of Lesnar on the big stage. And for it to be, you know, such a accomplished worker as Angle, as the guy that, you know, puts him over, is a good story, and there's a natural rivalry that would be there between the two, which plays into good story as well. But yeah, I mean, watching the match, there's so much that's so impressive about it athletically. I believe Angle's in pretty rough shape in this match. He needs surgeries and things like that. He's just trying to get through it.
Yeah.
And then obviously Brock.
Jeez.
Yeah,
it's horrible to watch even after all these years.
Yeah, and I'm watching it knowing that he's fine. You know, he's competing recently and all that, and he will be back, no doubt. But I still watch it and just think that guy's going to die. You know, it's terrifying.
It just looks so uncertain, and we've spoke about it before. When you see videos of him doing it, it just looks so easy to him doing that shooting star press. But there's just something that he's like Bambi on ice up there. But yeah, when he comes down, it's just horrendous. It's just horrendous.
Yeah.
But it's a good match, and obviously there's stuff that we know now. Like Brock was out, and Angle basically had to carry him through to the end. And I having known that now, and I wonder how he managed to kick out.
Yeah,
you know, Angle covers him after he lands on his head.
Yeah, and never, thankfully, having been knocked out, I wonder how long it takes you to kind of regain where you're at or what situation you're in and things like that, because even, you know, a simple instruction from Angle to, you know, kick out or something like that, can you process that? Do you? Yeah, I think it showed the sort of, he's not even a veteran, is he, at this stage, Angle? You know, he's been in the business a few years though, but it just, I think, showed him being able to take a lead and get through it and get the right outcome at the end, which is, I think it's probably good for Lesnar that he was in there with someone who knew how to do that. So
overall, WrestleMania 19 is a good event. Would we agree with a little bit of blips? Yeah,
as I mentioned at the start, none of them are perfect, but there's so much that's good in there, that's what just tipped it against another one that I was considering quite late on.
Cool. Are you going to spill what that might have been?
I don't want to until I know that it's not on your list.
Okay. Cool. Okie doke. So that's 19 for both of us at 5. What's your 4?
Okay, my 4 is 30.
Oh, 30 is my number 2.
Okay.
So let's talk about that. What do you like about this? We don't have to go match by match. If you don't want to, I'm happy to.
I don't think it's as relevant to go match by match here, because for me so much of it hinged round a story, and you know, it's the Daniel Bryan story, and it's the kind of thing I've never really seen, because I was watching Raw and SmackDown at this point when this was going on, and I've never really seen the fans push for somebody to be in the main event, and I think it's happened since, actually, but at the time I'd never seen it, and actually, you know, have some success in doing it, because it all kind of starts at Rumble when he doesn't come out at the end, and they want him to be the last guy to come in, and it's not him.
Boo the hell out of Rey Mysterio.
Yeah, poor Rey Mysterio.
Poor wee guy.
And then, you know, it just builds from there, and they start playing to it on TV because they've made the decision to go with it. But I still think there's that, you know, annoyance probably among the McMahons and people like that they had to do this, because he doesn't look like what they want their champion to be. They have brought Batista back to crown him, I think, was the original plan. He was going to get a title run. But, so basically story, Daniel Bryan has to beat Triple H to qualify to get into the main event, which is set as Batista v Orton. So you can make it a triple threat by beating Triple H. And there's quite a lot of emotion around, you know, the story, and fans are right behind him, and he gets the win against Triple H against the odds, and then I think there's a bit of damage done to him in that match, so you know that he's going to be up against it again going into the main event. But the story's I was looking at the rest of the card and thinking the story is so focused on that the Daniel Bryan against Triple H, and then in the triple threat. But there are some other decent things between that and the triple threat. I did like the fact that the Shield were on this show. Wasn't quite as mad about the sort of team that was cobbled together that they were up against.
It's an odd match, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, I think the New Age Outlaws had kind of reformed for a one-off event or something like that, but we're saying, who are these guys type thing, who are these three? And it ends up culminating in a match, but it felt like even by this stage the Shield were pretty far above that kind of level, just going up against a kind of veteran aging team. Yeah,
it's interesting. It's a 3-minute match for the Shield, and just a year on, two out of the three of them would appear in some form of the main event the next year. And one of the commentary team mentioned that the Outlaws and Kane are representing the Authority, which I thought was weird as well.
Yeah,
but I wasn't plugged in at that point either.
I think the Shield were, very anti-Authority at that stage, and I know that they'd been kind of either aligned with CM Punk or rumoured to be aligned with CM Punk. I can't remember the timeline of all of it. But I thought, it's their Mania introduction effectively, so I thought that was a good point to have on this Mania.
Here's a question for you about the Shield. Yep. What do you think of Ambrose, Moxley, just in general?
I kind of thought at the time that he was there that he played very well in a group, and I liked him when he first broke out. I never really felt like he got to what I thought of as main event level. I thought he was a pretty good worker. I liked some elements of the character, but I thought it kind of became a bit of a parody. And I know he's, said how much he hated a lot of the things he was asked to do in the storylines and things like that. So I've no doubt he had very little input into any of that. But what I've not done is seen much of what he's done since leaving, and everything I hear and read suggests, he's a stronger performer away from those shackles. What about you?
I don't know. I find him quite odd to watch.
Okay.
I think now his character is supposed to be a bit of a badass type character that he's playing in AEW, but I'm not really sure that I'm buying it. I'm not buying what he's selling. I just wondered. Like I assume that I know what your opinion is of Roman Reigns, although I think you're maybe coming round on this current version.
Yeah, it was more the fact that he was being rammed down our throats a bit. That was what, there wasn't the chance for anyone to make their own decision. You were being told this is the guy. And ever since, heel turn aligned with Heyman, he's had great storylines, he's had good matches, and it's like he's a totally different performer. And I just think he needed that. He needed a heel turn. He needed to be able to be a little bit more of an aggressive character. And I think that it just plays a lot better now. And I think when he, does, whenever it happens, hopefully it's not rushed, but when he does turn babyface again, I think people will accept it a lot better.
Yeah, legitimately. It's like the opposite of Daniel Bryan and what happened to him, I guess.
Yeah.
What are you saying about our boy Cesaro?
I mean, glad he had his moment winning. He's always felt to me like somebody who they could have used a lot higher up the card, so I'm glad they gave him the win, but then didn't really do anything.
Did nothing with him.
Yeah.
This is 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's still only now, he's probably in the same position.
Yeah.
Maybe a little further up the card, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I think is it looking like it'll be him and Rollins at Mania, is that? Yeah. And I think it's a decent spot because it's an established guy he's working with, and it's one of those where I go in thinking they could put him over, they might give him the win. and my hope is that's a springboard rather than as far as it gets.
Well, he body slams Big Show over the ropes here, and that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
And JBL says that we'll be watching that for the next 50 years. Whereas by the time WrestleMania 31 came around, I don't think anybody remembered it. But
yeah,
you tried. You tried, John.
Yeah. You've got Cena v Wyatt Part 1 on the next match, and I know at the time I was really angry that they didn't put Wyatt over. I just thought,
really?
I just remember thinking Cena doesn't need a win here. He'd already transitioned to being, a bit of a Hollywood worker, and I just remember feeling like, put the less established guy over on the big stage, give him his moment. But then maybe if that had happened, definitely if that had happened, you wouldn't have had what I found a very entertaining moment at last year's Mania. So yeah.
I liked this match, and I think I liked it looking back, having already seen that cinematic match from last year's Mania. I liked the storyline about him wanting Cena to hit him with a chair, and he wanted to bring out the darker side of him and all that. I liked the psychology. You don't really watch a Bray Wyatt match for his technical abilities. You watch it for the storyline and the psychology that comes with it. So I also enjoyed it.
Yep. Similar to you, I think I enjoyed it more watching it now than I did at the time, because it does foreshadow things that came, which is good. And then there was quite a big moment where Lesnar breaks the streak. Yeah, so I don't know, I'm trying to remember, did you see this, or are you only seeing this recently?
I didn't see it at the time. I had no idea at the time. I don't know, I maybe saw it 2 or 3 years ago or something.
Right, okay. So, yeah, this was like, you just didn't expect it because it's WrestleMania and it's Undertaker, and I think everyone had started to think, well, the streak will be his thing. He'll retire at some point and he'll still have the streak intact. And then they just break it, and it almost looks through the match. And you've got the crowd reaction, which is brilliant. Everyone's just looking absolutely stunned. But it almost looks like it happened by accident. There's because there isn't the normal match reaction and things like that, you're almost left looking, thinking, was that supposed to happen? Was that the story? And I think it kind of plays into this, but I think Undertaker was knocked out for a bit in this match as well.
Yeah, he hit his head when they went to the outside. And apparently Lesnar had to call the majority of the match. Yeah,
and obviously that's not the way it would normally be with those two in a match. And then that kind of leaves you thinking, well, did they have to do something like this because was Taker out? If they had no option or something like that. And I remember even reading things like, did Lesnar go into business for himself and things like that. And I think, it's pretty safe to say that much as the guy could win the vast majority of fights, he's a pretty shrewd businessman. He's not going to do something like that. He likes his money, and he pretty sure he will have enjoyed the payoff from all this. So that was a bit silly, but it just shows, I think, the shock people had about it happening. And you've got some brilliant facial reactions in the crowd, and even Heyman, who is the ultimate, my guy is going to win every match he ever has, but even he looks shocked
that's what I was going to say. Heyman is so good in this match, especially at the end. Something that I kept noticing more and more as I was watching these WrestleManias, as the years go on, the people in the front row are so disinterested quite a lot of the time.
Okay.
Really confusing. And during this match, there's a lot of guys in the front row are essentially like looking at their phones, chatting and all that, and then the 3 count. After the 3 count, it's just like a switch flips, and people are like, what? What? It's so interesting. So obviously you've got that iconic photo of the guy with the gigantic eyeballs staring, which is brilliant. But some of, like you say, some of the other reactions are class.
So I think, you know, it's an okay match, you know, physically and all that, but Undertaker being out for quite a chunk of it will have had a negative impact, I think, on some of the things they would have wanted to do and all that side of things. But this match is all about the story, and that's what you get at the end of it.
I like that. There's a good build-up, like WWE are amazing at doing these build-up packages, really. Have you buying into the matches. There's a really good story building up to this, that eat, sleep, conquer the streak stuff with Heyman. What do you think about Lesnar being the one?
Again, at the time, I remember thinking he didn't need it. And I know they played off it for a long time. You know, all the phrases Heyman came out with over the years about the fact he was the guy that broke the streak. But I think, you know, Lesnar's a main eventer regardless of anything that happens in any one match. He's, you know, he just needs to he could turn up at Mania and he'd be a main eventer, you know. I think had it been someone else, would they have got the extended payoff from it? I don't know, because WWE is so quick to pick things up and drop things, and I think it would have been a real shame if you killed it and then didn't run with it long term. I'm kind of back and forth on it. To me, had it been, you know, there's certain people that I look at and think could have really benefited from it, but they would have maybe struggled to turn face after it. Like I imagine if it had gone on a year longer or something like that, and it had been Reigns or something like that they had break it, a guy that could have elevated, but how would it have been received?
Aye.
And that might have been, you know, that might have had the opposite effect to what you would want to. I remember in the years before thinking I would have loved to have seen them have Punk do it when they had a match. I thought he would have been because he could have been so smarmy and cocky and arrogant about it, you know, and played off it long term. I remember thinking, not saying I think this should have happened, but I remember thinking from a storyline point of view, Orton would have made sense, because he came up as the Legend Killer. So I don't know that there's been people after that I think should have done it instead of Lesnar, but there were a couple before that I think could have made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I wondered, I think it's 24 that he fights Edge, is it?
Yeah.
Main event.
Yeah.
Like Edge was champion at the time. It wouldn't have been used to elevate him, but it might have been used to solidify him.
Yeah.
I agree about Orton. When's he fight Orton? About 21, 22?
It must be around then, yeah.
The fact that it's got to 30 and it's 21 wins, like it feels like it was never going to be broken. I think you said that earlier.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me about it, I think Lesnar's as good a guy as anybody that could have done it. I agree with what you say about Punk. The way that he was acting in that match, it could have been something that they could have used coming out of WrestleMania with as well. Like you say, it just confuses me that you need to have somewhere to go with it.
Yeah.
And Undertaker then is back at WrestleMania next year and beats Bray Wyatt, and I just don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think I remember thinking, is that it? Is he going to retire now that the streak's broken? Yeah, I didn't think. Excuse me, I didn't think they should have had him in a match against somebody up and coming and just have him, you know, beat that guy after this. Didn't
stick
really
him in
sense.
something a bit different.
Yeah.
Maybe the next year.
Yeah.
Obviously, you had Sting there the next year.
Uh-huh.
Even if he was in that Triple H and Sting match. Anyway.
Yeah.
We had AJ Lee winning the excuse me.
Yeah.
What's her name? Vicky Guerrero. Invitational.
Yeah.
It's always good to see AJ Lee.
Yep. Good character.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And then the main event. Like, I think that Brian Triple H if Brian Triple H had headlined this pay-per-view, it would have been up there as one of the best WrestleMania main events. I thought it was a really good match. And Triple H in 2014 wasn't the same Triple H as, you know, the one that was in 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
But even still, it was a really good match. The triple threat match is good as well, though.
Yeah.
And obviously it's just that whole story, that culmination of Brian overcoming the odds, especially after Triple H has been at him with a chair and all that in that first match.
I mean, they really, after clearly being reluctant to crown him, they really do stack the deck to make it seem like a huge achievement when they do. You know, credit for that, because that side of it's done very well, actually. It's a shame he couldn't have. I think it was injuries hit him just not that long into the sort of title reign, and then obviously more injuries and more severe ones that almost cost him his career. But just to see him, I think at this point when, you know, the whole of the arena are chanting the yes, yes and things like that, and it's one of those chants that you think, is that really a thing? But it just I don't know, it just kind of works.
Yeah. It's really obviously there's parallels between 30 and 20 and Benoit going over in the triple threat match at the end as well.
Yeah.
And that's 30, 20 and 10. I think you maybe said this to me, 30, 20 and 10, where you have like a kind of fan favourite technical wrestler.
Yeah, I think
win the title.
Yeah, it may just be a coincidence, but yeah, for it to be, and I know Brett had the title before, but that felt like his crowning as the guy at Mania 10. And then obviously Benoit at 20 and Daniel Bryan at 30, and they're just all these, you know, really respected, proper worker types. Yeah. So it does seem like there's a little bit of a pattern there.
This event to me felt special. That's why it bumped up to number 2 for me. Okay. It just felt really special, and I think that thing of like 10, 20 and 30 all felt special to me. I'm sure we'll talk about 20 soon. Cool. So that's your number 4.
Yep.
Okay. Number 4 for me was WrestleMania 31. That make your list at all? That
is the one that I excluded earlier today. I did think it would maybe come up because it was very close to being on my list. I had 6 and I needed to trim it to 5.
Okay. It's a good show. I think this is as late as I go, 2015. Overall, there's not really a match on it that was worth fast forwarding. I enjoyed all of them. Interestingly, I think every single match is less than 20 minutes, so you're getting like these kind of sharp matches. It's just unfortunate that we had a segment with Stephanie and Triple H and The Rock and Ronda Rousey. It seemed to go on for about 4 hours.
Yeah.
But I just like kind of quickly jumping through the card, just start off with the Intercontinental title match. Daniel Bryan, 1 year on, has been bumped back down to his rightful spot. Put on a cracking match. You've got Daniel Bryan, Wade Barrett, Ambrose, Ziggler, R-Truth, Luke Harper and Stardust.
Yeah.
Which on paper you think doesn't look the greatest looking thing in the world, but there's some good big bumps here. You've got Harper and Ambrose. I think Harper at one point power bombs Dean Ambrose through a ladder that's on the outside. That looks absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
It's a really good match. Ziggler's always good value in a match like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very good at taking bumps. He does it better than most.
Yeah. And a wee bit further on the show, we get quite a funny wee backstage segment with a bunch of all these different former Intercontinental champions doing the yes chant with Bryan.
Nice.
Steamboat, Bret Hart, Flair, Piper maybe. There's a bunch of guys. It's quite funny. Some other highlights. We've spoke about the Rollins Orton match before when we were talking about top 5 finishers.
Yeah.
Generally it's a pretty good match, which you'd probably expect for these two. Mm-hmm. But the finish is the absolute highlight when Rollins goes for the curb stomp and he gets shot away up in the air and hit with the RKO out of nowhere.
Very good timing. I do remember being a little bit surprised at the time anyway that they put Orton over, because it seemed like Rollins was just starting on the ascendancy, but that maybe all makes sense later on, I suppose.
Yeah, it's just like it's forgotten.
Yeah.
With what happens. Sting Triple H, I really don't know how I feel about this. Still, I think I've watched this match twice, really recently. Like, I've wrote here that the commentators are absolute dicks. All this chat about welcome to the big time, Sting. You've been to Starrcade, but this is WrestleMania, and all that's so cringy.
Yeah.
Who is saying that? Are they saying that off their own back, or is Vince saying that in the ear?
I am absolutely sure Vince is telling them to say that,
this
because
is the big time.
Yeah, he'll want to belittle any event from WCW, but
awful.
Yeah, I have to be honest. This match did play a part in me bumping this one off the card. I just don't get. The guy finally signs. He finally joins. He gets put in this, I don't know, mess of a match with all the run-ins, and I remembering rightly that there's DX people on one side and NWO people on the other.
Yeah, because like Sting was affiliated with NWO his whole career.
That was the thing. I'm looking and thinking, but they're all Triple H's pals. Yeah, it just, I don't know, it didn't make sense, and I think it just annoyed me that this is the spot they put him in, because it's not to say if he'd had like a straight up match with Triple H, yeah, I get that. It just felt like it was always designed to be a little bit of a mess, and it just, you wait so long for Sting, and then that's what you get.
I read today that when they were doing the run through the day before, and Triple H called the finish and said that he was going over, Scott Hall looked at Hogan maybe, or Hogan and Hall looked at each other at the same time to say like, what? But yeah, you've got like a kind of old looking Nash and Hall and like doing back body drops to X-Pac and Road Dogg and Billy Gunn. Yeah.
X-Pac probably didn't know which side he was meant to be on.
I'm a six-pack. I can't go any further beyond this match without talking about Triple H's horrendously cringy entrance as a Terminator. Yeah. And you've got Arnold, who clearly they've got him to do like a voiceover because they were chucking him in the Hall of Fame because, he's a big wrestling person.
Something like that, yeah.
This is the worst. Out of all of Triple H's self-indulgent entrances, this is the absolute worst. He had a quite good women's match on this card. The Bella Twins versus Paige and AJ Lee is actually a good match for what it was. Yep. Rusev and Cena felt like a bit of an old school event. The old kind of, in Vince's mind, Russian heel always goes over, even though he's Bulgarian. We all know he's Bulgarian, but his wife's Russian or whatever. Yeah. Or American, I don't know.
A little bit American, but yeah.
And they did this really over the top Captain America type entrance for John Cena with like all the various bits of history around America and all that. But like I say, I do actually think it was quite a good set up for a match, and it was quite a good match as well.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think, there's so much was done wrong with booking Rusev, and he obviously ended up walking away, but I don't think this is really a misstep. You're putting him in there with a huge star, and it was a pretty competitive, pretty good match actually.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he had a good entrance with the whole big tank thing and all that as well. They made, they're making a big deal of him.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about The Rock and Ronda and Stephanie and Triple H. It goes on for far too long. It's so self-indulgent. We've already had you coming out as a fucking robot, mate. Away at the back. Bray Wyatt v Undertaker we spoke about already. There's a couple of good spots in this when Taker sits up and Bray Wyatt's doing his kind of upside down spider thing, which is quite a cool spot.
Yeah.
It's just quite an odd match. As your kind of co-main event as well, but Lesnar Reigns probably wouldn't be as entertaining. Certainly wouldn't be as entertaining if Rollins hadn't come out to cash in. It totally makes it, and you finish the show on a high. Totally unexpected, and the way that the method that he does it, like the kind of sprint in, get involved, get the pin, and straight back out again, and he's up the top of the ramp, swing the belt a bit. That's just a really good way to finish the show off. Yeah, and I think even though he was a heel, you send the fans away happy, because they wouldn't have been happy if Roman had taken that. So.
Yeah, I think there was he was a heel, but I remember a bit of a crowd pop when he came out.
Absolutely.
And I think that, as you say, fans going away happy. I think this was maybe actually preferable to them to either other possible outcome. I think they were happier with this, and it set up the character that the character that he was going to be, really. I thought it was a good finish. I thought it was quite a clever finish, because I didn't see it coming, and I remember even at the time watching, I didn't see it coming at all.
And like up until it really ignited that match, because it's a bit of a slow burn.
Yeah.
Big two big sort of guys getting suplexed about the shop, and you're waiting for the spear and the Superman punch and all that. So I really enjoyed it. It's a good show.
Yep.
But never come out dressed as a bloody Terminator again. Right. Number 3.
My number 3 is WrestleMania 21.
Oh, okay.
So, am I to take from that this isn't on your list?
Not on my list.
Okay. So, again, I won't go through match by match. I'll pick out some that I think were among the reasons why I went with this.
Cool.
So the event kicked off with a Mysterio Guerrero match. So Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, who had been tag team partners, and they had started to have a little bit of a kind of natural rivalry, and they've obviously, the story of them knowing each other a long time and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where they end up, I think, going a bit crazy with the story as it goes on, and things like that, and things about, Eddie might be the father of Ray's kid and things like that. It ends up getting a little bit murky, but in the early stages, it's purely I think I'm the guy that carries our team. I'm, the stronger performer among our tag team, and I'm going to prove it. And, it just builds quite, for me, logically, as two guys who have been singles performers for, a lot of their career, that, they're in a team and they like the guy they're in a team with, but there's still that little bit of competitiveness between the two of them.
Yeah.
They both want to score the winning pin for their team and things like that. So it's a pretty good match. It's quite technical. I think Guerrero tries a couple of his tricks as he goes to, try and steal the win and things like that. Mysterio ends up going over, and it's just for a Mania event. I thought it started the card off at quite a good pace, quite a good tempo. Just a pretty decent match between the two of them.
Nice.
The Money in the Bank ladder match at this event features some pretty big stars. I think this is maybe the second Money in the Bank. I could be wrong on that, but it's not the first. I'm pretty sure, but or is it the first?
It's the first.
It is the first.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so I take that back. And it's absolutely star-packed.
Absolutely, I'm just looking at it here. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So Edge, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Christian, Kane, and Shelton Benjamin. And to be honest, Shelton Benjamin's in there to do some athletic stuff and make it look pretty good and take some bumps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But beyond him, every other one of them, maybe Christian a little bit lower in that pecking order, but you could see them winning.
Yeah.
You could see them giving them it. Edge ends up going over, but I remember at the time thinking it was an amazing concept for a match. I think Jericho's maybe credited with proposing the idea.
Yeah. I think the story was that they didn't have anything for Jericho for WrestleMania, and him and Brian Gervitz came up with this together.
Okay. And obviously, it ended up having a few of these matches at Manias, and then it sort of spiralled off into its own event. So yeah, it's a good match. There's some terrifying looking bumps in it, as you would expect. And Edge ends up getting the briefcase, and he's one of these characters that I think just thrives on that kind of situation, where this is the guy that could cash in a title chance at a title match at any opportunity. What a perfect guy to have in that scenario.
Totally.
Because you know that he's going to take every possible advantage he possibly can. So yeah, it was a good match, really innovative at the time. You'd seen ladder matches for titles and things like that, but this was just a bit different, and it felt like a big event match.
Sorry, just before you go on, I really like the idea of the Money in the Bank match being at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
When I've been watching through some of these, they're a lot of the time they're the highlight of the show. Certainly the early part of the show.
Yeah.
It's obviously it's a good concept. I understand why they've done what they did, but I do like it being as part of WrestleMania. Yeah,
I would agree. I think I preferred it being that to having its own event. And it felt like something big at stake in a match at Mania, and it opens up all the possibilities of this guy could cash this in later tonight.
Yeah.
That's which I think is an interesting angle to have. So yeah, very entertaining match, terrifying to watch at times, but in a good way. And then they go to the Undertaker Orton match, which I think we've mentioned at least a few times in terms of Orton as legend killer mentioned earlier. Could he have been somebody that actually went on and broke the streak and things like that? I was actually watching. You haven't watched the Orton Broken Skull session yet, have you?
Not yet, no.
So he mentions a few things in relation to this match, and the fact that he wasn't certainly out of the ring the most professional at the time, and some instances where he's made things like timekeeping and showing up at in the right sort of, not the right condition to perform, but having had a good night's sleep beforehand and things like that. There's a few things he'll mention that you might find interesting.
Cool. Surprised Undertaker was open to working with him, if that was what he was.
Yeah,
like at that point.
I think what comes across is he gets not just second chances, but third chances, fourth chances, and so on. And I think people realise he's always had a lot of talent, and they're maybe not willing to give up on it. And I think that's one of the other things that comes across in the interview. It's quite candid. He doesn't really hold back on any self-criticism, put it that way. So yeah, it's a good match. It's quite a competitive match. He gives him a fair amount of offense, and I think when watching it at the time, I did think Orton could win. It is possible that they would put Orton over in a match like this. Now, looking back, it's probably quite obvious that they didn't and wouldn't, but at the time, I did think, yeah, he's youngish, up and comer. They've given him titles, they've put a lot on him. Yeah, they could have him beat Undertaker at Mania. So it felt like quite a significant match in the Orton career for me, and I've always been. I've never been his biggest fan, but I do see there's a lot. He does give a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
And I think it was maybe more the promos side actually that I felt were maybe not quite as strong as they could be, but it's maybe improved a bit actually over the last couple of years.
I quite liked young, cocky, arrogant Randy Orton. Do you remember? Were you watching when he had the broken arm?
Yeah.
I thought he was quite good.
Yeah, I don't know, I just didn't always fully believe that he believed it, some of the stuff he was saying and things like that. But again, you're working with probably the script you're given and stuff like that. But I think he always looked like a good in-ring worker, good performer. I've no doubt when we talked earlier about Daniel Bryan maybe doesn't look like the way they want a world champion to look. I think Randy Orton looks exactly the way they want a world champion to look. You know, he's a good-looking guy. He's, you know, got the muscles. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good match. There's a Kurt Angle v Shawn Michaels match on this card, and it's very good. It's technically very good. It's quite heated. You know, they play up the fact that Angle doesn't really appreciate Michaels being referred to as Mr. WrestleMania and things like that. Angle sees himself as the main event, the top guy, and all that. And apparently, I think it was maybe on one of Angle's podcasts actually, he covers this match and he talks about the fact that he didn't really, when he came in, I think Michaels was away, and then Michaels comes back. So he didn't know him, and he didn't really know how to take him at times and things like that. And there was a really interesting comment that apparently Michaels made to him in the build-up to this, off camera, behind the scenes, which he said something to him like, "I'm not scared of you, you know." And Angle didn't really know how to take that, and then I think it maybe came to him a little bit later that he'd never worked with him before, and some people had fears before realising he was fully professional about everything, that Angle's a guy that could hurt you in the ring. I mean, if he chose to go off script in any way, and I think it sounded like it was Michaels just saying, you know, don't do that with me because I can hold my own type thing, you know. But apparently in the ring the match went off exactly as they wanted it to. There were no issues of any kind, and I believe it was Michael's idea that Angle go over.
Nice.
You know, he felt that he should get the win in the match. So yeah, it's a pretty good match. I think those two, you know, on any card going up against each other, but also they were on different brands at the time.
Right. Oh, really?
And they had never touched. So they'd never had a physical match between the two of them.
Right.
And then I think it all starts at Royal Rumble. That I think Michaels eliminates Angle, and that's the first contact they'd ever had.
Right.
And then that's the sort of build for everything.
Like it.
But it's kind of a way you can keep the brands separate but still have these big matches between the two of them, and I think we've talked about that before, that, you know, things like the Rumble give you the opportunity to build things like that.
Yeah.
There's one moment that I didn't enjoy at all on this card. So again, I'll just refer to my notes, which says Big Show v Akibono. What and why? Why is this a thing? Why is this happening? I don't understand.
Can I be really honest with you?
Yeah.
I disregarded 21 because of this match.
I understand it.
That's terrible. I'm just looking at it on Wikipedia. It was on for a minute.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have done that. I should have went and watched that. I feel bad.
It's a sumo match, but why are they having it? I don't know what you gain from this, because I could be wrong about this, but is Akibono a big name that's going to draw a lot of fans to buy? Maybe in the sumo world he's huge. I assume he is, and maybe it'll make a lot of sumo fans look and think, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to watch it. But I'd be surprised.
You might get a lot of like these guys that aren't wearing nappies and stuff like that. So
possibly.
Keen to see the Big Show in a nappy.
Maybe.
What a mess they've made the Big Show.
Yeah.
What's this, 21?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't. It was the one big negative I had against this card. I just didn't enjoy it. So after that, moving past it, you've got obviously by this era you've kind of got two world titles on the go, and in one of the matches, John Cena gets his crowning moment against JBL, and it's, you know, I don't know that there were many people who were the biggest fan of JBL being a world champion, but I thought he was quite good from a antagonistic heel point of view, and the fact that people maybe just looked at him as sort of shrug of the shoulders. That's the guy that was in the APA. What's he doing as world champion? But I do think, to have Cena be crowned against somebody who the crowd probably thought was undeserving of that spot anyway, also, helps from a Cena point of view.
Good way to build him, aye.
Yeah.
Get him over. Was he still like kind of rapper Cena at this point?
Yeah. This, I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but this might have been his first world title. I think it probably was his first world title. So I remember certainly through it was either Intercontinental or US title run, he was still the rapper guy. If he's away from it at this point, he's only just away from it.
Right. I liked rapper Cena.
Yeah, it was different.
It was charismatic.
I didn't hate it. I thought it grew old though before they stopped it. I thought it had already grown old.
Well, if you thought that gimmick grew old, let me tell you.
Yeah. So after this, now I'm always with the criticism, almost as much of you, of Triple H, but I think we both acknowledge that when he's invested in something and he wants to put someone over, he can do it. Mm-hmm. And he's obviously very accomplished in ring and things like that. This is the climax of the Triple H and Batista storyline that had started when they were still members of Evolution. So the Evolution group of Triple H, Ric Flair, Batista and Randy Orton. And Orton had gone from the group. I think he committed the crime of winning a world title that Triple H wanted at a point, so he had to go. And Batista goes and wins the Royal Rumble, and the whole story behind the scenes is of Triple H and Ric Flair trying to manipulate Batista to go for the other world title because they don't want him coming after Triple H. And you get these nice little moments on Raw where you see them having the discussion, and then the camera pans back and you can see that Batista's heard the discussion as well. He makes the decision that he's going after Triple H and his belt, and Triple H puts him over in the main event. Nice. And I think at the very next event, which probably would have been a Backlash, puts him over again.
Wow. I thought you were going to say takes it back.
No, he puts him over twice in a row, and it's they were obviously pretty close. I think they were workout buddies and things like that, but it was just an example of when he wants to, the job he can actually do in helping elevate somebody and put them on top, which it did with Batista. And I wasn't always Batista's biggest fan, but I think during this angle, and he became more of a, he was just the muscle-bound guy in Evolution. He wouldn't do much talking or anything like that, but he became a bit more of a character through this storyline, and then got crowned, which I thought was, it was good for the product, good for the TV show and all that. And you basically came out of this Mania with two, not necessarily young guys, because I know Batista got in quite late, but two guys who were new stars being crowned in Batista and John Cena. So yeah, I thought it was a good event, some good storylines playing into it. If you do watch it and give it a go, just skip past the Akibono Big Show, and I think you'll enjoy the majority of the rest of it.
Nice. It sounds like a good card. I'm a little bit disappointed I didn't give it any more time, but no, I like that. Sounds good. That was your 3.
Yes.
Okay, I think my 3 might be your 2. WrestleMania 20.
Yes, that's my 2.
It's my 3. So we'll just jump through it. We'll probably talk about the main event.
Yep.
Probably quite a lot.
Yep.
Just jumping back onto Cena. Like I said, I like this version of Cena. You had him fighting the Big Show, I think, for the US title.
Yep.
He uses his big padlock to knock out Big Show. I think he lifts him. Sticks him in the FU, it was called at that point.
Yep.
Which was quite impressive to see. I enjoyed the Christian and Chris Jericho. I enjoyed both the build and the match.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably the type of angle that's now been done to death, but at the time, the stuff with Trish, and it's a little bit cheesy and it's a little bit like soap opera, but it was I remember enjoying watching it at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
You got the double cross at the end, and but them two are fun to watch. We both like Christian, we both like Jericho. It's a really good match.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought they worked really well together. I thought they played off each other pretty well, both in the ring during the match, but also everything around it. I just keep wondering, see how you've got the involvement of Trish Stratus in the storyline and things like that. What is Vince thinking with Trish, with Christian, given his thoughts on Christian's face? Do you not think he's thinking, that's not realistic, that doesn't add up?
Possibly. Maybe he's thinking this is better than a blue dot over his face. Let's put Trish's face over his face. We've got this absolutely brilliant promo for The Rock backstage before him and Foley are fighting Evolution in a 3v2 handicap match. But before it, we get this brilliant promo for The Rock where he's just got the crowd in the palm of his hand, going back and forth. He's got the camera following him. He calls one of three. Who was the one that was in? Who was the one that was in MAGA? You know, they were in 3 Minute Warning.
Was it Rosie or Jamal?
Rosie, I think it was. He was like Hurricane Helms's sidekick. He calls him a fat son bitch. It's just, it's so
classic
funny.
Rock.
So funny. It's probably his cousin.
Yeah, this is. I was actually a little bit. I couldn't remember when I looked at this card how long Rock had been away. So obviously he started dabbling with Hollywood stuff and things like that. And was he fully part time by this stage? And I assume he was. He wouldn't have been on TV every week and things like that. And then I thought, when I looked at the match on paper, I thought, that's not really one that I'm all that enthusiastic about. But just seeing him doing a promo, you know, it just kind of elevates everything.
Aye. And it's a good match as well.
Yeah.
The Rock's clearly having a great time mocking Ric Flair. Pretty much every time he's in the match, he's dancing about doing the Ric Flair walk and all that. Yeah. And it's a good, fun match. I think it's a good match for Foley to be in. Saying that, what's this? WrestleMania 20? Foley's probably retired twice at this point.
Yeah, I would have thought so. Yeah.
But aye, that was good fun.
Yeah.
Lesnar Goldberg, less fun. Unless you're into, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if I knew at the time that I would have watched this, because I'm fairly sure I would have watched this when it was on. And I don't know that I knew that both guys were leaving. And then, you know, the crowd's reaction to the whole thing. Yeah, I mean, it's, for what you think would have been a big blockbuster match, it's just nothing. They don't care, and they want to ridicule both guys.
Aye.
And I don't know if Austin was put in as ref to try to save it, you know, because they know the booking committee, or Vince or whoever's making it, Vince it will be, knows that by this stage that the crowd will know both guys are leaving. So does he then say, right, we'll put Austin in and just try to liven it up a little bit? It's just kind of nothing from the start.
And it's a big deal to have Lesnar, Goldberg and Austin all in the ring together.
Absolutely.
It's also, they had a really good build, similar to the Michaels Angle thing, where they were on separate brands. And I think it was Goldberg bought a ticket and was in the front. Is that right? Goldberg was sat at one of the events.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite creative build for it to go down the way it did. So unfortunate.
I think Goldberg's actually involved in when Lesnar loses the belt to Eddie Guerrero.
That's right.
He involves himself then, so that's when that would be. Which is obviously they need to get the belt off Lesnar at that point anyway. But yeah, it's a shame because it could have been a big deal and it just didn't feel like it.
Yeah. And I think they got a chance to go again. Was it about 32, 33?
Yeah.
But
a couple of matches later on in their careers, but yeah, it is what it is. It's probably more just one of those unfortunate situations. It's they both want to go and they're going, and everyone knows it.
Is this when Lesnar went to try out for the Vikings?
Yeah.
Is it, right?
Yeah.
The crowd are shouting "You sold out," and I think that Shane McMahon's in the crowd also joining in shouting "You sold out." It's quite funny.
It's a funny one because I'm pretty sure going away to, try to win a spot on the Vikings roster, he's going to be making a lot less money than if he'd stuck around as a headliner.
Of course, absolutely. Where was Goldberg going? Was it just that he didn't sign a new contract?
Yeah, I think he was just done. I don't think he was a fan of how they'd used him since he came in, so he saw out his contract and walked.
Right. Oh well. Aye, disappointment, but nice to see them both end up with stunners at the end.
Yeah.
Everyone goes home happy. Angle Guerrero's a good match, as you would expect from those two, but to watch it and see it, just
I liked that's one of the matches where he did the thing with his boot, wasn't it? So that when Angle tried to put the ankle lock on, Guerrero's boot's actually loose and his boot just comes off in his hand. And it's just those, because with a lot, Eddie Guerrero's one of these guys that you look at and you think he needs some sort of edge to try to win against a huge star type, and they would find some creative ways for him to try and get that edge. I thought it was pretty cleverly done.
Aye. I think we spoke about Guerrero before on this and said how much we appreciate him in retrospect. It's so true.
Definitely grown, because I think at the time I would have been watching and thinking, just put the belt back on Angle. He's the top guy. Just put the belt back on him. But I appreciate so much more now when I go back and watch Guerrero's stuff, how good he was in the ring and psychologically as well.
Yeah, same. Not a highlight, I don't think, with the return of Deadman Taker at WrestleMania 20. I think he was still biking around. He was still biking around the place with Fred Durst at 19. We had Deadman come back to fight Kane and obviously beat him. I didn't love this and I didn't hate it neither.
It's fine for what it is, but it's a match we've seen quite a few times before, so it doesn't feel special, really.
Yeah. So we get to the main event.
Yeah.
Do you think this is the best main event?
I think
best WrestleMania main event?
Excellent match. I think it's kind of got everything in it, and if there are better main events out there, I can't off the top of my head think of what they are. I just think it's an excellent quality match, and
it's crazy. It's so good.
Yeah.
I text you saying I really don't remember Shawn Michaels losing that much blood.
Yeah.
It just adds to the drama.
It does. It gets to a point where you're looking, a wee bit worried about this guy. It's a lot.
It's like Eddie versus JBL, almost the levels of that.
But I think, there's obviously, again with Triple H, you kind of ridicule some of the things he's done and decisions that he's been involved in and things like that. But I do believe, looking back at this, that there was a real desire to put Benoit over as the guy and not make it look contentious or anything like that. He wins it because he deserved to win it. And if you look at the guys that he's in with, for him to, come out the deserving winner and the world champion from that, I think it's probably one where a Triple H, who we all know as a wrestling historian and all that, he'll have looked and thought, this guy deserves it, so we put him over on the big stage and we do it right, and I noticed you put out a tweet on our account asking whether people can watch Benoit stuff just in isolation for what the match was.
Yeah.
And I did find when I rewatched this, I could just enjoy it. I know everyone will have their own thoughts and whether they can do that, because it's not easy, but it's still a very enjoyable match to watch for me, just as a wrestling match.
Yeah. I find with some Benoit matches, I really struggle to watch them, particularly if he's taken chair shots or anything like that. But with this match, I think because it had been such a long time since I'd seen it, I just everything sort of fell away, and I just enjoyed it for what it was. But I understand the other side of the coin. I understand some people just find it really hard to separate him from what he did, and that's totally understandable. But going back to what you were saying about the decision to go with him, and not just go with him, but have him beat both of those guys, and genuinely beat them, and it not be like a kind of, he pinned the champion. It wasn't like Michaels beat up Triple H and Benoit managed to get a quick roll up or anything like that. It was to tap Triple H out in the middle of the ring and Triple H be almost at the rope and then roll him back over and tap him out. There was something really solidified about it, and I genuinely think it's one of the best WrestleMania main events, if not the best that there's been.
What again, trying to look at it in isolation, the end with Eddie coming out and they are the two world champions and they have their moment in the ring. It had a little bit of a sort of special, unique feel to it. To workers being the guys holding the belts at the end of the night. Thought it was a nice moment they gave them.
It was lovely. It's just so sad the way that you now look back at it. It's bittersweet, and that's a complete understatement. But like, just again, those parallels between 10, 20 and 30 is really amazing. How much of a close comparison there is between the three of them. We talked about the kind of goofy, all the faces coming out and lifting Brett up. But it is that kind of coronation that you've talked about before. The same with Benoit here, the same with Brian at 30. It's a great event.
I've already said to you it's going to be Cesaro going over for the belt at 40, so we've all got something we can look forward to.
Brilliant. Can't wait. Beat Brock Lesnar, Hogan and Roman Reigns in a fatal 4-way.
Wow. I hope nobody's listening, because someday will think that's a great idea.
Maybe chuck Titus O'Neil in there as well, just to...
Awesome.
So that's us at the end. Aye?
That's us with one to go. Yeah.
So I guess we have the exact same one, probably arguably the greatest WrestleMania there's been, WrestleMania 17. Agreed. Absolutely.
And I think there's a mix of things, because we can go through some of the matches which are excellent, but there's also that feeling of, I think this was maybe my peak fandom. I was watching, every week. I was watching every event. I was right in it at the point that this was happening, which does, I think, play a part from a nostalgia point of view, but going back again and rewatching it, I still thought it was excellent.
Yeah, and that's the difference between this and 15. I think I looked back in isolation, looking back at 15, I thought that was the perfect WrestleMania. Went back and watched it and it was bloody awful.
Yeah, we were the same on that, actually, because I remember, I think I messaged you saying, I've just realised I can't put 15 on my list because it's not good.
It just felt like a lock, and then you're actually watching it, oh dear.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, I went back and watched this and still thought it was like amazing.
Yeah.
So
agreed.
good to watch. So let's jump into it. We start off with Jericho and Regal.
Yep.
Which is when I was watching this, I was thinking it's quite an interesting first match because it's quite technical.
Yeah.
It's not really a crowd, it's not a fast-paced match or anything like that by any means. I love Regal's music at this point, and his smarmy gimmick at this point is brilliant.
Yeah, I think you're right in what you say, because a lot of the time they try to start off with a fast-paced match, and I assume that's just to get everyone up and going, get the adrenaline and the crowd flowing, but it's a different kind of opening match. But William Regal is one of these guys that I actually really liked, and I never really knew why I liked him, because he was the character was always this, pompous, arrogant, quite infuriating heel most of the time. And I think at this point, is he commissioner? Yeah. And you've basically had Jericho trying to get under his skin all this time, and Jericho has the deck stacked against him at various points and things like that.
That's right.
Gets his match, and it's quite. I thought their styles, they're quite different, but they match quite well for a match in the ring. And yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was a decent match to kick off with, albeit quite a different style of one.
I liked the idea that Regal was working on Jericho's arm and shoulder for the majority of the match, and he didn't finish it with the Walls of Jericho because he couldn't. And he finished it with a lion salt, and it just shows the kind of commitment to storytelling that they had, and it wasn't just kind of thrown away.
Yeah, it made sense, which is nice and not always that common.
Right. We had our boys Right to Censor, the Good Father. We have Good Father Bill Buchanan.
Good Father Bill Buchanan and Val Venus.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
With what is it? JR refers to them as Old White Sox or something like that. Stevie Richards.
Yeah.
Versus an odd pairing of Taz and the Acolytes.
Taz and the
APA.
Yeah.
I think I also look back at Right to Censor and think they're quite funny. I think I hated them at the time, but I think you're supposed to hate them.
And it's also it's quite a good story arc, because we all know, I think probably more now than I did then anyway, that there are these groups that you have to appease with your standards and things like that in terms of what you can show on TV and all that kind of thing, and to actually have a group out there that are talking about, no, that's unacceptable, that you shouldn't have that content, all that kind of thing. I thought was quite good. Looking back, because they were infuriating, but they were heels, so they're supposed to be. But I think it was a little bit more clever than I maybe gave it credit for at the time it was happening.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like Stephen Richards is quite an underrated performer.
Yeah, he had a lot of good stuff in ECW. I don't think was he on WCW briefly as well, and I just don't think he was ever really used properly.
Something else I appreciated about Right to Censor is the fact that the Godfather, who became the Good Father, still does the exact same moveset. So he does like the whole train and all that. Yeah, I quite like that.
I think for him the Godfather character was quite close to home, and maybe the Good Father was a bit of a stretch for him, but he was doing his best with it.
So we have Taz and Acolytes going over there, Bradshaw hitting and just a ridiculous clothesline for hell.
Yeah.
Next match, one of my favourite matches on the card. I don't know about you, what you thought about it, but the Hardcore Championship match.
Yeah, it was quite brutal. I think Raven took quite a lot of bumps in this. And just like I'm watching it, and 1 minute he's had all these weapons smashed off him, and then he's being thrown through some sort of glass window, and he just took a hell of a beating. But he's a character I always liked, and they build it at the start as, what the hell chance has Raven got in this, and he puts up a pretty admirable fight. He just in the end can't compete with the sheer size of the others. But yeah, it was good. I think there was a lot in the, obviously WWE took from ECW in terms of hardcore matches and stuff like that, and I thought they didn't really hit the right tone with a lot of it, but this was quite enjoyable actually.
It's an example of Kane will basically flourish in anything you give him to do.
Yeah.
He's done everything. He's had title reigns, he's had tag team title reigns. He's been in numerous different tag team teams with lots of different guys, and he's been involved in matches like this as well. And he's quite an underrated guy as far as basically fitting in where they want him to fit in.
Yeah, he's even done comedy with Daniel Bryan. So yeah, he can basically do it all.
Do you ever remember, just you talking about him doing comedy, do you ever remember Hogan and The Rock were going to be teaming with Kane on an episode of Raw or SmackDown? They started doing an impression of Hogan.
I wish I did remember it, but I'm going to have to look that out.
It's so funny. He starts doing the "What you gonna do, brother?" when Kane and The Rock and Hulk Hogan run wild on, and he's doing like all the posing and all that.
Awesome.
It's brilliant. Next match really surprised me. Like one thing I noticed was we're four matches in, and we've had 3 belts on the line.
Yeah.
This is for the European belt. Test is mega over. I've said this to you before on this podcast, how over Test was.
Yeah.
Fans are loving the testicles were big in Texas.
Yeah, I wonder if he's just one of these guys I don't maybe give the appropriate credit to. I just always think of him as this big guy that couldn't really work, but this wasn't a bad match, and he did have some other not bad matches. So yeah, maybe I'm harsh on him.
I thought it was a really good match. You've got Guerrero in there.
Yeah,
obviously. If he's dictating it, then it's probably going to be a good match. But I genuinely thought it was good. I thought Tess was good. The big boot that he gives Guerrero in this match looks like he's going to kick his head off. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that goof Perry Saturn was doing with that hat on.
Yeah, what was that? Yeah, I don't know. I kind of thought he's being a bit of an outrageous character, Saturn, but I never knew where it was going.
I think he was like way ahead of the curve as like this kind of CTE affected cat. No, they can't. Definitely wasn't that. Kind of said that with what happened with Benoit. Actually,
oh no,
I feel bad. My bad. Sorry, Perry.
Cancel the podcast.
And then you had the world's smallest man, Dean Malenko, coming out and getting involved, and
yeah.
So the Radicals must have still been a thing then.
Yeah, I think much as they started having their own independent angles, I think they were always seen as a group. Like, I don't think there was like a situation where one turned on the rest of the group to any significant extent. So I think even when, because Benoit and Guerrero were single stars, looking just, a couple of years later, but I think they were always positioned as being a group even when they weren't together.
That struck me as weird because I think, they were heels given what they did in this match, but Benoit was a face in his match against Angle.
Yeah.
Which was strange anyway.
Yeah.
I've only got one word written down next to Angle v Benoit. What do you think it is?
Excellent.
Close. Masterpiece I've written.
Okay.
I thought this was one of the best matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, I thought they always had really good matches, and then they kind of play to the fact that Benoit is so close. He's just that tiny bit behind, because he has like situations where he'll lose the match but get a standing ovation and things like that, and it's like you're kind of with him, that this is just the one he can't quite overcome. And he's trying so hard and he's so close. But I mean, that's sort of all the psychology around the storyline between the two of them. But then you've got this is when Angle was doing his I didn't tap because there was
that's
no
right.
Yeah, which I thought was a really good side of him. I think he has a chat with Edge and Christian.
That's right. Yeah.
At a point, and he's saying, if there's no referee and and he's going through all these things, he said, then it wasn't really a tap. It didn't count. It didn't mean anything and all that. And just sort of this kind of lighter side to what was sometimes a bit wrestling machine character. Some of the stuff with Edge and Christian was comedy gold.
Yeah.
and it was obvious how it's so hard to position wrestling matches as genuine contests, but the matches between these two always had that feel.
Yeah, absolutely. They start for at least the first few minutes in a kind of amateur wrestling match, and it's really gripping to watch. It kind of opens up for there. I think Angle ends up losing his cool and hits him, and they go for there. Yeah. And I don't remember the finish. I remember Angle rolls him up in a small package, grabs the tights, maybe. Yeah, that's basically the finish move, which again I think we've talked about before. It wasn't a finisher, it wasn't. I don't think they would have wanted to have Benoit tap out to the ankle lock at that point anyway, and it wasn't an Angle slam. It fluke's the wrong word, but it felt all the way like either of them could have won it. And Angle had the light. He did have hold of the tights, which gives you somewhere to go with the whole thing. Yeah. And then Benoit slaps the crossface on him when he's been interviewed after the match later on as well. Yeah. Like you say, it gives you somewhere to go with. Yeah. China versus Ivory of the Right to Censor. Like, this was obviously a way of basically highlighting how over China was at this point. Yeah, I don't remember probably enough in terms of timeline and things like that, but I think I said to you she'd had singles matches against men, and I couldn't think whether that was before this had happened, because it always felt like a bit of a mismatch when you had China going for the women's title. I think they said this is the first time that she'd fought for the women's title in this match. I mean, I can see the logic in putting it on her and things like that, because it would kind of feel a bit silly if she got to the end of her career without, having it or anything like that. But the match didn't do very much for me in terms of engagement or entertainment. I didn't get a whole lot out of it, to be honest. Just you talking about China going against men, did you ever see her cinematic match with X-Pac? Thankfully not. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, Shane v Vince. Again, similar to the Hogan, but probably a bit more enjoyable match. I really enjoyed this. Surprisingly enjoyed this. What do you think of it? I didn't hate it. I think it, with the story they had on the go at the time, and with Shane, which we've talked about before, Shane being in there and he's got his WCW guys up in a box and watching the match and all that, and it kind of was trying to play it as Shane the upstart trying to like unseat his dad, but his dad is this despicable person that nobody would really be behind, with everything that's going on with the Trish storyline and Linda and all that. And I think Stephanie's aligned with Vince in this, isn't she? Yeah. I thought, Shane will always give you some moves. He's going to do some athletic stuff in there. And there was at least an ongoing storyline. It wasn't a Vince match for the sake of having a Vince match. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to really enjoy seeing Vince performing in the ring. He did take a hell of a beating in this. Yeah, he did. I think they covered up quite a lot of the match with the stuff with Stephanie and Trad. I couldn't understand why Trish decided to have a change of heart halfway through the match and slap Vince. Yeah. That didn't make any sense to me. That was odd. But the stuff with Linda, and that's quite good when she stands up and kicks him. Like Vince is good at selling that sort of stuff. And it felt like that actually felt like the big payoff, is Linda finally striking back.
So yeah, I didn't hate it as much as some of Vince's in-ring performances, but yeah, it was there and it was quite entertaining. Is what I would say for it.
I'd agree. Did you hear? I don't know if you've ever heard this, that the young was Shane referred to my young boys or something like that, talking about WCW guys that are contractually obliged to be there.
Yeah.
They were supposed to run in and help Shane win, but Sean Stasiak told like a bunch of journalists like 2 nights before or something like that, so they had to scrap it. Hence probably why he got labelled meat and
and then buried.
lived on Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah.
Come on, pal. Next up we had TLC 2.
Yep.
Just one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. It's in terms of you can't. It's a match you can't really look away, and the way that I can quite often determine that is, you know, being a little bit addicted to my phone, like, you know, most people are. Is will I pick up my phone and start, you know, scrolling through Twitter or something like that while there's a match on the go? And if I don't do that, that tells me I was pretty engaged in what I was watching. And I don't think there was any point where I felt like I could do that during this, because there's just so much going on. And I know at times when you've got matches like that, you can lose the psychology. You can, you know, it can be a bit of a spot fest and nothing really means anything. But because there's 3 teams worth in there, there's a hell of a lot of selling going on in terms of what the effect was of the move being executed. It's just that the next thing's already starting to happen.
Totally.
So yeah, it's one of the most entertaining matches I've ever seen, and I think it, for me, in terms of the whole TLC thing, it was the peak.
Agreed.
And I don't think you could ever realistically better it.
No, totally agree. Some of the bumps in this match, just kind of quickly going through them.
Yeah.
There's a point where they're all up on the ladders and Christian goes from the at the top of the ladder to the outside of the ring.
Yeah.
It's brutal. He takes that bulldog from Spike Dudley off the top of the ropes, and Spike Dudley must land square on his coccyx. That was horrendous. Matt and Bubba go from top of a ladder to outside through 2 tables.
Yeah.
Which looks ridiculous. Those tables just splinter. They just go straight to the floor. Jeff goes through Rhino and someone, Spike, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's
from that ridiculously sized ladder.
Yeah.
There's others.
Where did they get that ladder?
Jeff Hardy always manages to seem to find that ladder. It's just amazing to me that he's still, you know, like, see, when you watch through some of the other WrestleManias, I think there was WrestleMania, I don't know what it was, 33 maybe, that I watched, and the Hardy Boys came out as a surprise. Yeah. And I want to say it was a ladder match, and he's still doing it then. It's just, you know, it's just absolutely mental. Yeah. So it's just, I agree with you, what you're saying about it being the peak, and to try and replicate it over and over again with other guys, are better taking it in a different direction than they are trying to replicate it. Agreed.
Yeah, it's if anyone hasn't seen it, that is like on the list of must-watch matches.
Agreed. My wife came to watch it when I was watching this, and she seemed like a bit nonplussed about some of the stuff that was going on, but she certainly perked up when Lita came out. She couldn't believe how high up her thong seemed to be, so that was her big takeaway for that.
So that was her highlight of the match. That's yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's impressive, but it's not the most impressive thing that happened during that match.
So after this, I think we go straight into Taker Triple H.
So
or am I missing something?
You're missing the gimmick battle royal.
Oh, of course. How could I forget?
Now, this, I tried, because when I was watching this, I was trying not to be negative, and I will continue to try that when we review, the next Mania. But when I was trying to just take this for what it is and not take it seriously, and they changed the announce team. It's Bobby Heenan and Gene Okerlund that do the commentary through it. And it's stupid, but it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to take it seriously.
Yeah. Impressed how long Pritchard lasts in it.
Now, there's something that I remember him referencing on one of his podcasts where he says that he and Jim Cornette, I think, just seek each other out, and they're like, let's just go at each other, and we'll barely move, and we'll try and kill the time we're supposed to be in by doing that.
Brilliant. It takes a hell of a bump going out the ring.
Yeah.
Did you catch Mean Gene calling Earthquake John Tenta?
Yes.
That's really weird. My old friend John Tenta.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I mean, it's daft, but it's fun.
Do you know a wee bit of trivia about One Man Gang? That is Akeem, and he was supposed to be Akeem, but he couldn't fit in the clothes anymore.
Brilliant.
Which is quite a feat because Akeem was a big guy.
Yeah.
So he reprised One Man Gang instead.
Wow.
There you go.
Okay.
Was that a gobbledygooker?
Yeah.
That was not good. Doink the Clown got a good pop.
Yeah, I think Doink the Clown's one of those where I quite like the idea of what they could have done with it, but I don't know, they just went weird with the whole Doink the Clown thing. I don't think I hated it as much as some people did. Thought like evil clown, that's something.
What about burnt evil clown?
Yeah, well, that's. I was going to say that's maybe one for the future, but yeah, maybe not. Nah.
So yeah, Triple H's taker after that, which is a bit of a let's fight all the way around the arena sort of stuff. It's quite a good match, but it's all right.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It's not a classic, but I thought it was a decent match. And yeah, they're everywhere across the arena, and yeah, it's quite entertaining.
Aye, but it's all building towards the greatest package that WWE have ever put together, in my opinion. The Limp Bizkit My Way, Rock and Austin build up is just absolute class. Timeless.
It just works so well, and when you've got these songs that even like years later you hear the song and it makes you think of that.
Yeah.
And I think if there was significant differences between the way WWE did things and the way WCW did things, I think the packages they used were one of those where it's just night and day. They were so clever about the way they put them together. It felt like such a big event you were building to.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of these packages make or break a reason to watch the match.
Mm-hmm.
It gets you invested. We've spoken about this before. Sometimes it doesn't actually matter what happens in the ring. It's the how invested you are in the storyline.
Yeah.
And even going back to, you'll correct me, WrestleMania 5, Savage and Hogan.
Yeah.
It's not the same type of presentation of package, but the package that they put together for that to tell the story.
Yeah.
Like if you'd never seen this before and you saw that, you would be invested in what's to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel that that's the same with that Rock Austin package.
Yeah, agreed.
And the match absolutely delivers. The ovation for Austin when he comes out is ridiculous.
Yeah, I had to look again. I'm sure it was mentioned a few times in the commentary, but it's in Texas.
Yeah.
And obviously, at this point and for the last few years, Austin's massively over anywhere, but in Texas, Jesus. Yeah. The only issue I've got with that is what happens at the end. Because again, you're in Texas, and they kind of, they have a match and it's pretty good, it's pretty heated, and I think by this stage with Austin Rock, there's not really a heel in the mix, and they're kind of competing to be the top babyface. And I think it's still Austin, but Rock is incredibly over, you know. And I think from hearing him speak about it, it's actually what happens at the end. Austin aligns himself with McMahon and they screw the Rock. And I think it was Austin's idea. And he felt like he'd gone as long as he could as babyface. He wanted to do something different.
Right.
But what's so difficult is he wasn't your typical babyface.
No.
He wasn't your, you know, Hulk Hogan. He wasn't your John Cena. He was, you know, an antagonistic babyface.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he drank beer and he swore and, you know, all that. And could be quite underhanded even in matches, but he was still, you know, the fan favourite. And the crowd just don't accept the turn.
No.
And I think they're almost confused because...
they're almost at a point of cheering Vince.
Yeah, and there's been so much Austin v Vince over the years that then the alignment, I don't know, it kind of comes out of nowhere. And I get it because apparently Austin, you know, really pushed for it. And a lot of people in the office were like, we're not sure this is a good idea, but he's our top guy, he wants to do it, so let's try and make it work. And, you know, anyone who's going to turn heel, align them with Vince, that makes sense. And had it worked, you're left with the heel Austin, the huge babyface Rock, and maybe you can get, you know, a bigger run out of that anyway, but, you know, a lot happens straight after this, or it started happening before it, which means it's not really a direction to go in anyway. But it just, I'm sure Austin said it before, that from his career point of view, as well as from the business's point of view, they were at their peak in terms of how hot they were, sales, you know, everything. And that was the peak, and everything started going a little bit down after it. And he thinks, I think from his own point of view and from his own, you know, monetary point of view as well, that it was a mistake and they shouldn't have done it.
The thing is, Austin is getting cheered. Obviously, he's getting cheered in Texas, but like he was so over with the watch stuff, the checking his watch stuff.
Yeah.
Even like all the silly stuff they did with Kurt Angle with the cowboy hats on and all that sort of stuff. Like, it didn't really matter what he did. He was still over, but it did just give him different stuff to do as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I thought it was a really. They always had pretty good matches, and they weren't necessarily, you know, smooth wrestling matches and stuff like that. They would tend to have spots where they went for each other's finishers and stuff like that, and you always were never quite sure who was going to win, which is, it's a nice element to have in a Mania main event. But just probably a misstep in terms of, because Rock had more natural heel qualities to him from the point of view of where you were from what a fan wants.
Yeah.
It's kind of easier to turn on The Rock than it is on Austin. It just fell a bit flat, but I still enjoyed the match, and, you know, I still think, you know, you put Rock Austin as your Mania main event, it's a main event. You know, nobody's ever thinking it doesn't belong. It's always a main event.
The thing that I really liked about this, the whole story about this match, was Austin needs to win. He wants that belt and he needs it, and he's pulling everything out of the bag to try and beat The Rock, and it's not working. At one point he puts $1 million dream on him. Yeah, he does. He hits him with a chair multiple times, and Rock keeps kicking out. It's the whole thing of he's tried everything. He's now even aligned himself. It's a good story. It's maybe just it's just the position that Austin was in. Yeah,
I even wonder. It probably still would have fell a bit flat, but if it hadn't been in Texas, you know, it might have got a little bit more of the reaction they were looking for.
Yeah.
And he's never just going to be booed, because, you know, whatever spot Austin was in, you know, you could be up against the ultimate second babyface or something like that. He's just not going to be booed. He can do every heel trick and they're not going to boo him. And yeah, like you say, that's just the position he's in. He's been too popular for too long. And then what I'm really curious about is where they could have gone with it if they hadn't ran into, you know, the invasion and things like that, which all kind of, I mean, the way they went about it, it all just got in the way, really, for a while. Would they have continued a Austin Rock program with Austin trying to be the heel? Again, it's hard to know if it would have worked, but it's interesting to think if that hadn't been there as what they had to spiral off into, really. What could have happened. Yeah,
no, agreed. And if you're interested in where it could have went and where the invasion angle could have went, then I would just direct you to our episode 7 when we put our careers on the line as podcasters and wrestling fans and rebooked the invasion angle, which we made an absolute mess of, but got to somewhere in the end.
It's fine. Maybe in a few years we'll go back and rebook the rebooking of the invasion angle.
Yes, I like that. So overall, WrestleMania 17, the greatest WrestleMania of all time?
Yeah, I think, because what I was trying to weigh up is, like when we did the previous ones, and I had the ones I loved from there, and I think I had 10 as my top one, and I'd loved 5 as well, and you know, there were a few in there, and 14 as well, but for me 17 is better than any I had on that list, so it must put it as top of my favourite ever.
Peak fandom, I like it. Yeah. Just one final note from me on that WrestleMania. Best commentary combination for me, Heyman and JR. Are perfect.
Totally agree. I loved it. I didn't know, I think it was maybe reading JR's book, that he and Heyman had done bits and pieces together, commentary before, in WCW days, and I think it was one of their sort of second-rate or third-rate shows that they were both doing some commentary on. So when Jerry Lawler walked out in support of his then wife,
that's right, Miss Kitty.
Yes, who'd been fired unceremoniously by JR, slightly awkward.
My God.
Yeah, apparently JR was like, okay, well, we've got Heyman, he's here, and I know we can bounce off each other, it works, we've done it before, so rather than, you know, try and go and hire a guy or, you know, bring somebody in from absolutely nowhere, I've worked with him before, so let's make it him, and they did work so well together.
Aye.
It's probably my favourite ever announcer combination, but it was so short-lived.
Aye, because Heyman almost went straight into the invasion angle, didn't he?
Yeah.
I like how Heyman wasn't playing like the generic heel commentator. Mm-hmm. He was joining in, but a lot of the time he's just antagonising JR rather than like King just randomly sides with the heel. Whereas he was just kind of winding up JR. They had a good chemistry, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's us. Do you agree with our picks? Are there any out there that we missed? If you've got a different view, let us know. You can contact us at Outlaws Pod on Twitter, and Outlaws Pod on Instagram. Give us a shout, let us know. Did you have any honourable mentions, Adam, that you might have included?
I think the one that was closest was actually the one you mentioned, which was 31.
Right.
That was the one that I ruled out last, so it was in the mix. I think you and I maybe had some similar thoughts that the one a couple of years ago, when they had the women's title match headline the card.
Yeah, 35.
I was so impressed with the storyline and actually, you know, a lot of that match, and I wanted to be able to speak about it, but I just couldn't justify it with the rest of the card. There were too many holes in it.
Yeah, for that and for Kofi Mania, and there's a really good tag team match, but a lot there's other matches on the card that are just really not very good at all. So yeah, I was close with 24. There was bits and pieces of 24 that I really liked. Surprisingly, Batista versus Umaga I quite enjoyed, which was for some reason a SmackDown versus Raw like brand supremacy match.
Okay.
We had William Regal introducing Umaga as Umanga, which I quite liked. That's the same card that had Michaels versus Ric Flair on it. The career-threatening match, which I thought was quite a funny way to bill it. That was the one that had Taker at Edge as the.
Yeah, it is a good card actually. I remember watching the Michaels Flair, and it's so emotional the way they play it. I thought Michaels' performance in it was really impressive.
That was cracking.
Yeah.
I did I did pick my telly up and throw it out the window when Edge tapped to Hell's Gate though. So
okay.
There is that as well. So yeah, that is us. Our WrestleMania journey culminates a week on Tuesday with WrestleMania 37.
Yep.
I'm so excited. There's a match at Mania 17 that Heyman says it's the gimmick battle royal. He says this is about as much fun as a man can have with his clothes on. And that's how I feel about 37 at this moment.
It's good because we'll have a little bit of balance. You'll be so excited and I'll be just shitting on everything.
Objective, Adam. I'm just going to quickly run through some of the confirmed matches that we've got.
Yeah.
This might whet the appetite for it. So on night one, we've got the 2 nights again, which I quite like as a concept. Night one, we've got Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair, which I think people are lobbying for that to main event. I personally don't care what main events, but some people are very invested in that. Cesaro versus Seth Rollins. Braun Strowman versus Shane McMahon. I think this match came about because Shane threw paint on him. And also, did you see when Strowman was doing his run around the ring thing that they played sound effects that sounded like a train?
Oh, Jesus.
We've got the New Day versus AJ Styles and Omos, which is one of the matches that I'm intrigued to watch, but interesting to see what Omos is like in the ring. Bad Bunny versus The Miz, say no more. And Bobby Lashley versus Drew McIntyre for the World whatever championship it is, Undisputed or whatever. Not too exciting, is it? Cesaro v Rollins should be good.
I'm excited for that. Like you, I'm quite keen to see what Omos will bring. Hopefully something. But yeah, there's a lot on there that I'm not that enthusiastic about, but I will do my best.
Let's see if I can get Perky up for night 2. Kevin Owens versus the Conspiracy King Sami Zayn. And like you said to me the other day, they seem to be doing something with Jake. Is it Jake Paul or Logan Paul?
I don't actually know the difference. Yeah, it's someone Paul.
Not the boxer one. Oh, they're both. Who knows? Big E versus Apollo Crews for the Intercontinental title.
Okay.
I'm really not digging Apollo Crews' Blood Diamond newfound accent that he's trying on for size.
Did they not try that with Kofi a few years ago?
Yeah, that's how Kofi started out. He was Jamaican and then
suddenly the accent just went away, and I think they even mocked that at one point on TV. Said, "What happened to your accent?"
Who else? Triple H said that.
Yeah.
The breaker of kayfabe. We've got the Crispy Fiend versus Randy Orton, which I really hope is a blow-off match, and that's it.
Yeah.
What are they doing? What are they doing? Our boy Randy Orton deserves more than this, doesn't he?
Yeah, I feel like after the high of last year that Bray Wyatt deserved so much more than this, but here we are.
He's now, I think this was last night, I saw a picture of it on Twitter. He was sitting on a swing, just looking really odd with his burnt new facade that he's got, sitting on a swing with Alexa Bliss. She appears to be keeping him inside a box or something like that. I'm so confused.
Okay.
It's not for us, is it? Let's be honest.
Maybe us being, the middle-aged Outlaws.
We're practically middle-aged.
Yeah, so maybe this is for the youth. I don't know.
I'll get my son to watch it with me, see what he thinks. Probably
He
petrified.
might love it. Let me know if he enjoys that.
We'll bump some Bad Bunny in the background whilst we're watching it. Asuka versus Rhea Ripley.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Edge versus Daniel Bryan versus Roman Reigns, which I think is now officially been made a triple threat match.
Yeah, I did have a little bit of a rant about that to you, in that I just didn't feel like... I love Daniel Bryan. I absolutely love him. He's one of my favourite performers, certainly over the last few years. I have no objection to him having a big match at Mania. I just didn't think this match needed the addition of a third. I was quite enthusiastic for it just being...
Edge versus Roman Reigns.
Yeah, I thought it had everything it needed with that.
Yeah. They were telling quite a good story, especially when they had Edge going around the different brands and popping in on NXT, saying that he might choose to fight for that belt. Same with on Raw and SmackDown, and Roman saying you need to acknowledge me as the main event and all that sort of stuff. That's a good story.
Yep.
But now they seem to have turned Edge heel. Is that right? I've not watched all of Fastlane.
Yeah, I mean, everything he did was a heel move. I don't know. I mean, so I suppose when they say, a really good heel can justify what he's doing, certainly to himself. And from Edge's point of view, he's already earned all this. This is his moment. This is his time. Why is somebody else getting involved in this?
Yeah.
And I get that. And I thought he played that absolutely well. And I think he probably will be treated as a heel, and then Daniel Bryan is the babyface going into the match. But it was one of those where I just didn't think it needed it.
No. It's almost like they didn't actually have anything else for Daniel Bryan to do.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Watch it in isolation. Hopefully there might be some good things.
It's not a match I'm dreading watching. I'm sure it will be a good match. I would have preferred the more straightforward storyline, and then I was really intrigued to see how they like meshed in the ring and what story they told in the ring. So I think it'd be a good one.
Yeah, me too.
And then add in Daniel Bryan, who is gonna, he's a good worker. So him being in the match from a physical point of view, there'll be good things in it. I've no doubt about that. But it's I almost wouldn't mind him being kind of taken out of the match, and then they just go as a, one-on-one.
Yeah.
Doubt that'll happen.
I wonder if that's the plan. There's that thing about Vince or someone having concerns that Edge, believe it or not, ages day by day, and he's looking older by the day. I wonder if that's the thing they're hoping that he gets carried a little.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't looked to me like he can't carry a match physically, which you would think if you had a concern about an older performer, rather than it being how old they look facially, you would think it'd be more of a, I'm a bit worried this guy can't go for the full, half hour or however long they have the match. But I'm not getting that was the problem, and I don't think with Edge it would be the problem.
No.
Listen,
they kept letting Undertaker wrestle at WrestleMania for however many years.
Yeah, and it does seem to be centred around his face, and
it's really weird.
Big shock. The guy looks his age. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't look his age at all.
I mean, what is he?
49 or something like that, I think.
So he's 9 years younger than me and looks about 20 years. 9 years older than me and looks about 20 years younger.
It's all that makeup they put on them.
Yeah, it must be. That's it.
Don't get yourself down. So our next episode 10, will be just do a wee review of what is certain to be an absolute barn burner of an evening, or 2 evenings.
2 evenings, yeah.
Yeah. So we can get our thinking caps on for what we're going to top 5 after that.
Excellent.
So until then, everyone enjoy WrestleMania, stay safe, and we've been the Middle-Aged Outlaws. And say goodbye, Adam.
Goodbye, thank you everyone.
And we'll see you for episode 10.
Cheers.